It's worth noting we're only in John or Mark chapter 7, as I said to the young ones. This is the last miracle Jesus works in Mark's gospel. Chapter 7, he's done. Next Sunday, spoiler alert, it's going to be that story where they're at Caesarea Philippi and he asks, "Who do they say I am?" And he quickly moves into, he turns his face to Jerusalem and the cross. And that's that one where Peter says, "Over my dead body is that going to happen?" And Jesus calls him Satan. Just a lovely story how the whole thing goes. There's a lot in the Gospels that Peter probably goes, "Oh gosh, they wrote that down? Come on. I'm the rock. Why don't you focus on that?" But we could all relate, can't we? But this miracle is very personal and very specific, and it's kind of weird, quite frankly, isn't it? It depends on how you where you put your commas, but it's very possible that Jesus spit on this guy's tongue. if you missed it, there's two commas in there, and of course, I can't speak for Greek. Hebrew doesn't have commas, so it would have just been one whole sentence, that he spit, and it touched his tongue. That's what it would be. Anyway, it's a very intimate experience, however you want to put it, whichever one he did, because either way, he put his finger in his ear, and he at least touched his tongue. That you can't argue. We have a statue in our chapel at Camp de Sales that a young artist made that is very modern, so it's kind of hard to understand, but it's this miracle. So what you have is them like right on top of each other, and it kind of looks like he's strangling him, because he's got like this hand here, and then he's into his mouth, and it will look like they're wrestling or something. But it's a very intimate thing. It should make you think of Genesis 2, when God as creator makes humanity from the humus, from the soil, and breathes into his nostrils the breath of life. It's a very intimate statement. And this miracle goes on to be very specific to this person. He takes him aside. Doesn't always do that, right, in his miracles. He takes him away from the crowd, away from the show. He's not going to let him be a spectacle. He's sparing his dignity, if you will. But I always submit to you, there's a second reason for this in all my work with deaf. I don't think sometimes people think about that there's more to deaf in terms of its culture than just that they're not hearing you. And that's like if you're in a big group, for a hearing person, when you're in a big group, you have that ability to listen to sounds all around you. They don't. And so deaf don't particularly enjoy big groups because it requires you to be on a swivel, but you're not catching this, and you might look over and realize they're laughing, and you missed it. Right? And so Jesus taking him aside allows this absolute intimate focus, is to take him away from the show, because they pushed him up there, right? They brought him to him. They brought this guy to Jesus, and Jesus says, "Let's get away from the show, and let me focus to you, and let me make sure you understand, I am with you. I am with you in this moment." And then he looks to heaven, because he can't say this to him. Where's the power coming from? From on high. The power is from here. And because he's touching him, then he groans, which would have been the only way he could have experienced what he was doing, which would have been to feel that vibration. And then he says something that he might have been able to get off of lip reading, right? But Ephphatha, doesn't work well in English. Ephphatha, Ephphatha. Be opened. And it all comes together for him. And so Jesus humbles himself to enter right into this guy's limitation. Meet him right where he is, because that's the only place Jesus can meet you and I. And this guy and everyone he ever met is right where you are. He never stands on the other side of the room and says, "Come to me." When he does use that phrase, "come to me," he's already standing right in front of them. Last week I mentioned in my homily, and I thought of it driving here. I can't ever think of a time where Jesus interrupts anyone. It speaks to the dignity he always gives to people. So the last couple weeks, as they were asking questions that were really not sincere, he never interrupted them. He sure could have, and maybe should have. Let me just stop you right there with your stupid question before you get it all the way out and embarrass yourself. Let me just stop you. He never does it, as near as I can tell. I was talking to my best friend this week on the phone. I said, "Can you think of a time?" He said, "No, but you often point out that when he tells the prodigal son story, the father in that story interrupts the son." You remember that? He's got the threefold speech. Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. I don't deserve to be called your son. Treat me as a hired hand. He practiced it when he was back in the pig slop. But when he gets to the Father interrupts him when he gets to the third phrase, because the third phrase is to deny his dignity. Treat me as something other than I am. And he won't let him say that. So while Jesus never interrupts, when he tells the most powerful story of forgiveness, the Father in that story does interrupt. All this going on at the same time in this miracle. And yet, as I said, miracle show is over as of this reading, which tells us a few things. Well, again, he said, please don't tell anyone. And they said, sure, tell everyone what's happened here. And of course, why he doesn't want them talking about this is it's going to take them to the wrong place, as it does. They just see him then as the political Messiah. They see the power without the sacrifice. And so next week, he moves it all to the cross. He moves it all to the journey to Jerusalem. And yet the miracle is there. He not only restores this guy's hearing, but he heals his soul. And you and I have the same opportunity in this Eucharist. This miracle, which is ours, which is intimate, which he meets us right where we are, whether you feel worthy enough or not, the invitation is right in front of all of us. Something that we could celebrate every day if we had the time and the inclination. Well, except Good Friday, of course, right? Otherwise, the Eucharist is available to us. Well, even there, of course, we can receive. We just wouldn't celebrate that sacrament. But this miracle is available to us every time we want. And it's teaching us the same thing. Healing, but not healing disconnected from our suffering. That what it's really communicating, just as he did to this deaf man, is, I'm with you. His very name, God is with us. And so whatever else is going on in our lives, our suffering, our struggle, all the things that make us feel disintegrated, he's putting it all back together with an intimate miracle. For this guy, as we just heard it described, but for you and I today, right off of this altar of sacrifice, his real presence coming within us to help us, not as some magical thing, right? Same as it was for this guy. There's never the genie effect, there you go. It's to say that I'm with you, whatever's going on in your life, highs and lows, I'm with you. And so as we think of this young man who was healed in speech and in hearing, but more deeply in soul, may we be the same, that we bring to this Eucharist, this sacrament, our fears and our dreams and our hopes and our longings, and all that comes to this liturgy. What he's offering to us is the most intimate thing possible. And as I said a couple weeks ago about the Eucharist, that's just part mystery. We know it, but we don't fully understand it. And that's not only okay, it's necessary for it to be that powerful. So as we pause to think about that he's coming right up to us. He's coming right up to us and giving us this intimate gesture. It is part miracle, but it's always going to lead us to follow him so that we can sacrifice for love of others, for our community, and whoever in this world needs it. That's a strong invitation. He's pulling us aside too, so that it can be in that point, just a one-on-one that is the whole community, but it's an invitation first. Let's just take a moment to pause and say, I want that, Jesus. I want your presence more deeply within me so I can be a more faithful disciple in this world. May God be praised.